Hi, I'm Robert with Rash Guitars. I'm building a mold for a jumbo guitar right now, and so just going through my process of how I build that mold. I've already cut everything out on the bandsaw, and then I took the very first one and I sanded the edges really smooth. I happen to use a oscillating spindle sander. You can use files and sandpaper or whatever, but you just want to make sure this is your master. It's going to be perfectly smooth. Okay, and then the rest of them I went ahead and cut out, and I've got all of the mold parts here. And basically what I'm going to do is just kind of build them up. I've got 8 total, so 4 for a right and 4 for a left basically. So I'm going to attach the first one here. Now flip it over. I've already pre-drilled this one, but I took, a small bit and drilled a few holes. I'm gluing and screwing this at the same time. I've used straight CA glue and done that, and it worked fine. There's different ways, but I want to work with this thing pretty quickly and move through it. I don't want to glue one and then have to wait for clamps. So that's why I'm gluing and screwing. So I'm flipping this over from my master so that I can glue it and screw it on here. So we're going to glue it real quick. And getting the glue out pretty quick. That bottle is very open. Excuse me. That was not a coronavirus sneeze. That happened to be a lots of dust in the shop sneeze. I don't think I'm quite done. Got another one that wants to come. I'm using a credit card to just spread my glue. Probably a familiar trick to most of you, but I find it gets it on there pretty evenly. So get it spread out on here. I do have a little too much glue. So I can take some of that and I'll just put it onto the next layer and move quickly so I can get that next layer on there. Now the thing is I cannot glue the next layer on until I flush trim this. Now I've cut this just a little bit large on the bandsaw, maybe a 1/16 of an inch big is all. So moving quickly. Most important is I line up one edge, keeping in mind this is now, the second layer is the bigger one, and I want to have that reveal, that little ledge, that 1/16 of an inch ledge all the way around so that I can have the room to trim it off. Looking pretty good. Now remove any glue you have that is maybe dripped out. Okay, and now I only put a 3 screws in there, but that's enough to hold it for now. The glue is really what's going to be doing the. Now I'm flipping it back over because the bit that I have has the bearing on top, so I want my master on the top, and we'll go ahead and route it. Well, once I plug it in. Okay, we're in great shape. I'm going to flip it around. Back up. Okay, now, in all reality, those two have now become my master, because in all reality I don't need to, I'm going to use layer number 2 as the guide to trim layer number 3. So make sure this one gets enough glue, but not too much. Need a little more on that one. Okay. Just a good even coat. MDF will seem to suck up your glue pretty quickly. So you don't want to go super thin, but you don't want it squeezing out everywhere you're putting them together either. So there's other ways of doing this. If I did a lot more of this big surface layout glue, then I would have a paint roller with a paint tray full of glue. I've done that in the past when I had a lot more surface area to glue up. It works wonderfully well. But for this little bit, it's not worth the mess. Okay, and that looks pretty good. So that one, we're actually going to just make sure my sawdust is all cleaned off. Okay, we're going to put that on there. I'm going to flip it over because I'm going to screw it from the bottom again. Now again, we got to get a couple of, I want to sink these heads, countersink these heads when I'm doing this. So obviously I'm drilling in random places that are different from where I drilled at the beginning. This is where 2 drills come in handy too. One for drilling and one for setting your screws. Okay, before I set it down, set those screws, we're going to make sure we're lined up pretty well. Make sure you have a nice reveal all the way around, and then we can go ahead and set our screws. Something doesn't feel right. I've slipped. Pull that one out, and lost my reveal when it slipped on me. And so we don't want that to happen. We're going to come back and really pay attention to that this time. Okay. That looks... Dang it. I keep slipping on that one. Alright, we'll try this one more time. Perhaps it'd be better if I just set them up. Quick clamps can be helpful as well. Okay. There we go. That's where I want it to be. I am going to create some new holes because I was off on those other ones that I drilled. I need a new bit. This thing's dull. Move my clamp over so that it doesn't try to separate while I'm drilling it in. Okay, looks good. Do the same thing over here. Okay. Now that that one is in, I'll put the new one on the bottom and cut that one. Scrape any glue off. Okay. There's level 2. Or it'd be a third level actually. Now I'm going to grab another one. And that one is going to go on this side. This one is the bottom of this half of the mold. So I'm going to probably put a couple of extra screws in here just so that they're holding down the corners. Okay. That's done. We can glue it. Time to refill my glue bottle too, which is good. It's time for a new one. All right, get that spread nice and thin. More important than thin is even. Okay, we've got what we need. Off of the surface. Okay, flip my last layer on. And then flip it up. Got a little bit of glue to remove off of the surface, which is totally fine. Okay. I'll use my clamps again. And okay. Now we'll get this one screwed on and then trimmed down. And then we're going to work on the other half. And so there's a little trick we're going to use for that. Okay, there's half of my mold. Let's go ahead and trim it. Get all that excess glue off. Okay. Okay, looks good. That is half of the mold there. Okay. Still have a little bit of squeeze out of glue coming out. That's fine. Okay. I'm going to bring this over so you can see it. You can see it's nice and clean all the way through. Now we're going to do the other half. So since we're doing the left, we're going to do it a little bit different this time. Okay. Grab a couple of other things here. Okay. We don't want to glue the next layer onto this one, obviously, because that would make it 5 layers deep, and we'd only have 3 for the other side. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to make our own double-sided tape. Use the little CA tape trick. Okay. think that should hold it just fine. Okay, the only thing you want to make sure you do is when you lay this out, make sure your tape is in the right place. Okay, so we'll go here. Line it up. Okay, take a thin line of CA right down the middle of each piece of tape on one half only. Okay, hold that up out of the way, spray some activator, and then I'm going to flip it outside so I can align it quickly. Then we're going to pull it together nice and quick and get that glue to set with that activator. Okay. All right. Now we're good. There's a little bit of glue on here that I want to get off. That's squeezed out from the last layer. Okay. All right. Now that I've got that on, I will take a razor blade and just clean it up. Just somewhat, not worry too much about it. Router blade will get rid of most of it. Okay, now that that's on there, that's not going to come off. I can go ahead and trim this one, but then I'll have the ability to separate it as well. So, plug myself back in. I really need to run some more outlets over here. Just haven't had time. Now that I've cut that last one, get the last little bits of tape off of there. Now I can separate them. Just use a chisel. Make sure you get the one that's actually taped and glued on, not glued on. And then just pull it apart. Okay, now I have a master for my other half. So peel all that tape off. Comes off pretty quick and easy most of the time. Okay, so there's half my mold. Looks like that'll be my left half. And then I've got my first master that's nice and clean for the left mold. So with that one, I'll put my left half aside, and then we'll start building up the right half. Okay, we'll do the same thing for the rest of them until we get them all done. And then we'll have a mold. Okay, I got both the right and left hand sides done. I've taken a razor blade and I've just kind of scraped any excess drying glue out of the inside so that both are just butter smooth all the way around. And they actually look really good. I don't know if that's going to zoom in or focus in on there, but those edges look really, really nice. That's a good mold. It's really important that they're nice and square, because when you're building your rim, one of the most important things is to start with a very squared foundation. You don't want your sides kind of tweaking in anywhere. So you've got to connect these things. There's different ways to do that. I'll show you a couple of options that I've done in the past. But these will go together. You want them to be able to come apart so you can clamp them together and get the rim built, and then pull it apart when you need to pull the rim out. So this is our mold, and it looks good. There's our jumbo. So I'll show you a couple of other models. This is my OM model. I actually came up with this one. I had a friend who had a CNC machine, and anyway, he got really busy with work and couldn't do any more for me, which is a bummer because this was my favorite way to do it. We even had him cut these little, well, I don't know, they're kind of almost tongue and groove, or mortise and tenon in a way, where they just lock together so your mold doesn't shift up and down. And I used these quick latches to be able to attach it. You can adjust these and make them tighter or looser, which is really nice. The thing I don't like about using these is if you have to work on your rim and you have to stand your mold up, it doesn't balance on these little latches, these levers. They will work. You don't have to do that much, but it does make it kind of hard to work with. So that's my OM mold. And then my dreadnought, I got a little smarter and I created these blocks, and then I just did a bolt that goes all the way through it. Now the drawback of this one is you actually have to have a couple of wrenches to loosen this up and then pull the bolt out to be able to separate your mold. It's not that big of a pain, but the benefit is that I can stand it on end and I can work on the inside of the side bracing and things like that without having a problem. On this one, what I did, let me grab some wrenches. On this one, for alignment, because you can't have these things move on you. So, tighten up here. See, like I said, this is kind of a pain, just getting them apart. And it's not the end of the world. Got a big through bolt, a couple of washers, and a nut. That's how that one goes together. Okay. So there's my dread mold, which hopefully I will not be using my dread mold anymore because I want to build my own models. Okay. Pull the bolt out. Okay. What I did is I used a couple of dowels. I don't know if that's going to focus in right there. There's the channels, and on the other side I've got the dowels kind of glued in. I cut some trenches. Basically I did it through it with a drill press. And that works great. It keeps it from front to back and side to side, it keeps it together. So it can't go this way or this way. So it keeps this mold aligned pretty nicely. And that's okay, and I don't mind doing it that way. On my DA model, which I did just before I did this one, you can see I used the quick disconnect or quick latches, and then pull that out. I just used dowels and alignment dowels, and those, kind of funny, they were a little more tricky to line up and get them perfectly where I wanted them. They were a little more tricky than the other methods, but anyway, those are some options. So the two things that you have to do with your new mold one is you got to come up with a way to keep it together, and two, you got to have it aligned correctly. So if you put those latches or even a bolt through on these without having some type of an alignment aid, you know, the potential is you can get them off quite a bit, and then you're going to have problems with building your rim. So you got to get them aligned well, and then you've got to have a way to bind this thing together and hold it together so the mold will stay sturdy. Okay? Any questions, let me know. But that should give you an idea how to build your mold.